welcome back to the other side of sports. Glenn Allan filling in for the Big E on the Nooner. Eric Cohen off this week, and the other side of sports taking over the Big E's chair. Glenn Allan alongside Arthur Lockhart. Today we're talking about childhood sexual abuse, and Sheldon Kennedy and Theo Fleury are two names that people are familiar with in the sports world who were sexually abused by Graham James. And Theo Fleury joins us on the line right now. Theo, my friend, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. Listen, buddy, we, as I said off the air, we've kind of laid a little bit of the groundwork down about childhood sexual abuse. But if you would, for the people who are watching this, we go worldwide. If you could, Theo, I know you've done it a gazillion times, but Reader's Digest condensed version, if you can just kind of lay your own groundwork of just explaining what happened to you and where you're at with things right now.
Well, I was abused from 14 to 16 by Graham James, and at the time it was very difficult for me to even understand or come to grips with what was happening to me. He made it so I relied on absolutely everything from him, money, companionship, friendship, you name it. And, I think the biggest thing is that, from the first time I ever stepped on the ice, as a 6-year-old, my dream was to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
And, he basically held, all the cards to my future as to whether, I would become a National Hockey League player or not. And so he, I was playing in Moose Jaw with the Moose Jaw Warriors, and he was the head coach and general manager of the team. And he actually got fired the year I was 16, and thank God that happened, because I was then able to move away from the physical relationship that we had, and I quickly discovered drugs and alcohol as a way of coping with that emotional pain and those emotional scars that were left behind. And it caused me a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and I pretty much became an instant alcoholic from the very first time I took a drink, and I struggled for 27 years after that, to get to a place where I actually feel comfortable in my skin again, and my life is awesome and fantastic, and I have great people in my life. I have tremendous support in my life, and it's been a long haul, but I think that all of our listeners out there who maybe are struggling and haven't found their voice yet, healing is possible, and life does get better, and it really has been a truly empowering experience to be able to get to this place in my life, and now be a victor over child sexual abuse, and now be an advocate for all kinds of change when it comes to dealing with childhood sexual abuse.
And that's a great segue into where we're at today, Theo, talking about being a victor. Just explain what that means, and take us back a couple of years and to where that term and everything comes from.
Yeah. Well, when I wrote Playing with Fire, I had no clue what I was getting myself into, and but I quickly realized, as I was out on my book tour, that 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 stat, 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys are sexually molested before the age of 18. I would, it happened right in Toronto at the Indigo the Eaton Center. The very first book signing I did, there was probably 6 guys that came up to the table and could, barely get the words out, but they said me too, and that continued right across the country. Everywhere I went, signing books and doing my speaking appearances, it quickly became clear to me that I was involved in the biggest epidemic on the planet.
Yeah.
And I hate the word victim, because really, when you look at it, was I responsible for what had happened to me? No, not at all. I was a young kid with hopes and dreams and aspirations of becoming an NHL hockey player, and as human nature is, we automatically take on that shame that is not really ours to take on, but
Yep.
we do, and so like I said, I struggled for many years, and I met a girl, along my travels who we sat down, for a coffee one day, and she said, I don't consider myself a victim. I don't even consider myself a survivor. I actually consider myself a victor over this. And I was like, yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I feel about it. And hence, she now works for my company, and she's the president of Fleury 14 Enterprises, and has been a tremendous friend, a tremendous colleague, tremendous sounding board. Is incredibly smart, intelligent, bright, and it was funny because I was in Vancouver last year to host the National Aboriginal Achievement Awards.
Yep.
And the trial was going on, and so I submitted my victim impact statement to the Crown and the defense, and found out that the defense actually got to edit my victim impact statement. I was like, that's a crocker, you know what?
Yep.
And so a half an hour before it was being read in court, I called a press conference in Vancouver, and I read my victim impact statement word for word, and 600 media outlets picked it up. And quickly after that, about an hour later, we were flooded with emails after emails with people saying, I just wish I could read my victim impact statement. I just want to be heard. And so...
Actually, Theo, can I stop you there for a second?
Yep.
Arthur, I had no idea that a victim impact statement could happen.
They're edited in a lot of different ways. And Theo, you're hitting on a really, probably the most crucial piece of all of this, is the idea of voice. That we want to have processes in place where a person's voice can come out. That's the most powerful step for the healing, for anybody to move forward in their lives, is to get your voice out. And we have an urban legend that if we just hand things over to a particular system, that it's got my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
No.
And so your voice, Theo, you're absolutely correct that that's the thing that we want to have. Any process is my voice to be heard first. And so that it doesn't get stifled yet again. I've had many people go through the criminal justice system and say that they felt victimized all over again in the criminal justice.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
That's the sole purpose of the justice system, is to, re-victimize for the defense. It's a money grab for the defense lawyer.
Yep.
And, so on May the 14th, we're encouraging people all across the country, whether you can make it to Toronto or make it to Ottawa when we finally get there, but or set up a walk in your town or your city. And basically, what we want you to do is we want you to write out your victim. We're actually calling them victor impact statements, and we want everybody to write a victor impact statement. Make a copy, because we want you to send that copy to 24 Sussex, to Prime Minister Harper's residence. And when we arrive in Ottawa on May the 23rd at 12 noon Eastern, all in unison, we are all going to read our Victor impact statements word for word. And at the bottom of the statement, we want you to say, "My name is Theo Fleury, and I am a victor over child sexual abuse, and I demand change in the laws."
You know, I just want you to back up just a second, because I really like the story as you have it written on your website here. You okay?
Yeah, for sure. And
I want you to tell me this. Tell the folks a story about the frog and all this.
yeah, well, I'm an Aboriginal person by blood, and I'm Métis, and something that I'm extremely proud of, and so I've had the opportunity to visit 55 First Nations communities, since my book came out, and so I was in Bella Coola, British Columbia, speaking at a sexual abuse conference in Bella Coola. And Bella Coola, if anybody's ever been there and knows anything about it, it's one of the most spectacular, most beautiful places I've ever visited. And there's only one way in and one way out of that place. And so I got there early, and a young man who was 24 years old came to me and said, would you like to go for a walk? He said, I'm kind of the historian for our tribe. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we hiked up into the mountains and walked by this incredibly roaring stream. When I just reached my hand into the water and drank the water, that's how pure it was.
Yeah.
And so we hiked and we came to this clearing where there was a whole bunch of carvings that had been traced back, thousands of years. And they were all of animals. And if you know anything about the Aboriginal culture,
yep,
we're all connected to the animals in some sort of way. And so he went and started explaining the different carvings and the animals and what they represented. But there was one that really caught my attention, and it was a carving of a frog. And so he looked at me and he said, "Have you ever seen a frog hop backwards?" And I said, "No, I've never seen that happen." Well, the frog can look to the left and he can look to the right, but he's always going forward. And I went, holy cow, I said, that's me. And so fast forward 9 months later, I'm in Winnipeg at another conference, and there's a sweat lodge right on Main Street in Winnipeg. And so we were invited to do a sweat the night before the conference, and so we went and did the sweat, and it was like, every other sweat I've ever done, very spiritual, very cleansing, and awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next day, I told the story of the frog, and as soon as I was done speaking, the spiritual leader who ran the sweat the night before grabbed the mic out of my hand and said, "You'll never guess what walked into the sweat lodge last night." And I said, "I have no idea." He said, "The frog." And so, I'm continually telling this story of the frog everywhere I go, and there's frogs that show up everywhere I go. And so they shut the conference down right then and there, and they did a very spiritual ceremony, and I was presented with a pipe. And if you know anything about Aboriginal culture, getting the gift of a pipe is the highest honor you can receive.
Right.
And so I've been telling this story of this frog, and so I spoke to the Meadow Lake Tribal Council. They're a group in Saskatchewan, and there was 9 bands there. And of course, again, I told the story of the frog. And when I was finished, one of the elder ladies who sits on one of the councils came up to me and she goes, "Do you realize that the frog is the healer of children?" And I was like, "No way,"
Wow.
Because we're all, considered God's children, and obviously, we need to heal from child sexual abuse. So, and that's why, and that's how basically Victor the Frog was born, because you know what, I didn't want this to be about me anymore.
Yep.
I wanted to have something that symbolized, you know, what we're all trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to look behind us anymore. We're going to move forward. We're going to find our voices. We're going to make a lot of noise, you know, and we just want to let the daylight in. You know, we want to shine that very bright light into those deep, dark corners where these pedophiles hide out, and let people know that, you know what, it's not our shame to bear anymore. And I think in the next 6 months is going to be the biggest transference of shame this country has ever seen, and we're going to give it back to its rightful owner. And those are the people that have abused us. Those are the people in government who continue to sweep this under the rug. You know, we're going to pass that shame back to them because it doesn't belong to us anymore.
Theo, I got some emails coming in, and one of them asked, why is Canadian society not taking this issue why is Canadian society, government, not taking this issue seriously? And Arthur, you can chime in as well. Go ahead, Theo.
You know, I've talked to a lot of politicians along the way, and you know, when you tell them that stat, you know, 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys, you know, you do some simple math. You know, that's 2/8, 1/4 into the country's population, and you know, we have 8 million survivors of child sexual abuse, and you know, they have a tough time believing that it's come to that, and so that's another reason why we're doing the Victor Walk too. Is we want as many survivors, victors, and advocates to join us in unison on this walk, so that they can physically see it. So they can see it, and so that they know that it is what we're telling them it is. And you know, the next election is in 2015, and guess what? The more people that participate, that means the more voters we'll have in the next election. And if they don't change the laws before 2015, I guarantee you, I'll be out there campaigning that if your MP or the Prime Minister or the whatever party it is that wants to take this on, and that would be the first thing that they do when they get in power, is to change the laws around child sexual abuse. We ain't going to vote for you if you don't have an answer for us.
You know, one of the other things before Arthur chimes in here is I heard another stat, and this is one that I stick to a lot. We talk about 1 in 5, and we're going 0 to 18. You know what it's from 0 to 12 is 1 in 3 boys, 1 in 3 girls. It's 1 in 5 boys from 13 to 18, and then it stays 1 in 3 girls from 0 to 18. But between 0 and 12, it's 1 in 3 both.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and we have to stop going to 18 because from 13 to 18 with boys, it changes. But from 0 to 12, it's the same, 1 in 3.
Wow.
And just going back to one of the points that you were citing about lighting, that the voices of men, it was the first film in Canada under Into the Light, was just that, to shed light on the issue of childhood sexual abuse.
That's what you guys did.
That's what we did at the Gatehouse. And the second one that we're doing, one of the men actually went to the NDP group to get that as part of their resolution for their mandate to speak to the issue of childhood sexual abuse. And the eloquence that comes out of all of these men, all of these women through those particular films, in a way, Theo, could be part of the precursor to your walk to support you, because we want to shed light on everybody, right? That it happens in every walk of life. And so it's really important that we keep that in our minds. And your story about the frog is quite powerful. And there's a salamander down in South America that actually has incredible self-healing powers. And I think there's a sort of a connection between those two metaphors, in that the healing power is always within the person who's been victimized by the trauma as well. And they're helping their voice come out is an acknowledgement of their own inner strength, that they aren't, I agree with you, the word victim doesn't take us anywhere. It keeps people stuck.
It does.
But if we can keep it in the sense of we're transforming this trauma into something really powerful, then you really transform a whole culture. It's not just one person, it's actually personal transformation turns into social transformation. It happens all the time. And so
well, you're changing a home, and if you change a home, then you change a neighborhood, then you're beginning to change a community, then you begin to, all of a sudden it's a town, a city, and then it grows, and it's the men. The men are the men. If we can change the men, then all of a sudden domestic violence is going to reduce. Then the stat out there of 90% of long-term incarcerated males were sexually abused when they were children. If we can reach those guys, because they're going to get out one day. And this is what we're talking about. Another email for us, Theo. Let's see which one. I got a whole bunch here. Let's see. How have you dealt with your anger issues, and have you found your peace?
Well, anger served the purpose, while I was, dealing with my pain and all that. But today anger doesn't really serve a purpose in my life, and I've worked really hard at my issues of attachment issues, my abandonment issues. Those were two key things that I think really, were a direct catalyst for my anger. Is that whenever I felt abandoned, or whether I wasn't really attached to life, I wasn't living in the present. And thank God for hockey, because it was the best anger management class I could possibly have.
It's true. It is. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and so sports became, a great outlet for me, but I'm actually in the process of writing my second book, and I met a lady in Winnipeg. Her name is Kim Barthel, and she's a neurobiologist who specializes in childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with her for about 8 months now, and she is actually rewiring my brain from all the trauma that I suffered in my life. And I've seen a huge change in myself, and I'm a lot more calming, I'm a lot more compassionate, I'm a lot more caring. And even my wife and my children have seen a huge difference in me since I've been working with Kim. And so, basically the book is going to be, we're actually going to write 5 different books on healing and associated, to brain trauma. Because when you're sexually abused, your brain actually shrinks and twists. And, unless you get therapy, it will stay in that state. And so, we've been able to, untwist it, and my brain is slowly starting to repair itself, which is, something that I never, like, I thought if I got rid of the drugs and the alcohol and the, behavioral problems that I would be fine. But I found out, going through the Graham James trial and all that I was starting to, get some flashbacks and all of that. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm so grateful that I found Kim, because now I can even take my healing and my recovery to an even higher level than I even thought was possible.
Just on that, Theo, that point alone about neurobiology, at the Gatehouse, it's the first place, I believe, in Canada where we take in the concept and integrate the concept of neuroplasticity and mindfulness. Like what you're talking about, you and Kim doing, that's what we've been doing at the Gatehouse. And watching people's transformation unfold through this process is exhilarating. It's beyond language to tell you the joy that you see in a person's experience when they do realize that they can actually alter their brain. Their actual neural pathways can change. Not any different than somebody working out with weights to change the shape of their physique. You can do that with your mental state, with your brain. Yep. It's absolutely, it's true.
It's like I think it's the next biggest thing that we have in healing is.
Absolutely.
And, Kim is like one of only 10 people in the world that, that teach this, type of therapy. You know, she was in Singapore. She worked with the Singapore government to set up a program there. Then she was in India for the last 3 weeks, setting up programs all over India. You know, she's worked with the Hasidic Jews in New York on their incest problems. So, you know, I think that this whole Victor Walk, I think, is going to be able to provide so much more hope and inspiration for everybody that gets involved, because, you know, it's like I said, once you find your voice and once you let the world know, and, you know, you're accepted by caring and loving people, and believed, your story's believed, man, does it ever open up the world, and you quickly become a very empowered person, and huge change can happen because of that.
Theo, we're we're getting shorter on time, but I want to ask you, you know, when it comes to men, and particularly athletes, it's a very closed off world. And what I mean by that is, you know, you have, you know, the dressing rooms are very guarded as to who comes in, and you know that. But how important is it for, you know, whether it be former players or current players, when they see someone like yourself or Sheldon or Sugar Ray Leonard, other guys healing from whether it be sexual abuse or changing their lives, getting clean and sober, whatever the case may be, how important is it to sports? Because again, we just saw Josh Brent, second time drinking and driving, caught, and this time he Dallas Cowboy D lineman, and unfortunately killed a teammate. I mean, this stuff continues to happen, and it has to stop. How important are positive role models like yourselves to the current athlete?
Well, you know, when you're playing a professional sport, you know, you're not allowed to be vulnerable, because if you're vulnerable, that's a sign of weakness, and you know, other opponents, because the sport is so competitive, is if they see a chink in your armor, you know, then they will focus on that, break you down, and eventually beat you, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, I always tell this funny story, is that, you know, can you imagine if the coach came up to me before a game, you know, for example, against the Edmonton Oilers in the Battle of Alberta in those heydays? Can you imagine if the coach came up to me and said, "Hey kid, how you feeling tonight?" Well, I'm kind of feeling sad, coach. You honestly think that he would put me on the ice? No chance. So we learn very quickly to stuff all of our feelings.
Yep.
And you know, when you stuff feelings, that, you know, when it finally explodes and comes out, it's, you know, rage and anger. And when you get in that mode, you make some bad choices and bad decisions if you don't actually talk about your feelings. And, you know, hey, I'm one of the toughest SOBs that ever played hockey. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Today I can talk about my feelings because I don't want to stuff them anymore, because I know where that leads to.
Yeah, you've already seen the damage.
Actually,
well, you've seen the damage. AJ, how are we doing on time, buddy?
We got 3 minutes.
3? Okay. Go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of go with that, Theo, that one of those things that we mention at the Gatehouse all the time is when you're able to express your vulnerabilities, that's when you're at your strongest. That's exactly what a person has to do to open up their own doors, right, to get on their pathway. Yeah. So it's absolutely
cool. And vulnerability is actually courage.
Yeah, absolutely. And courage, the root word for courage is whole heart. You're opening up your heart. And if you think about that, even physically, and you're mentioning about neuroplasticity, if you open up your heart, the pathways, whether it's neurobiological or physiological, start to open up. So it's powerful.
Theo, really quickly, where do things stand with the trial and the fact that Graham James has appealed? And can you please explain what that means with him potentially getting more time?
Well, I think what the trial has showed us is that, you know, how incredibly flawed the justice system is
Yes.
because basically, if you know anything about pedophiles, well, they're very manipulative, they're very smart, they're very bright, all this stuff. And basically what we've seen in the Graham James trial is that Graham James has manipulated the whole entire justice system and turned it around where, we even have the judge saying, poor Graham, he's suffered enough, you know what I mean? So it's just ridiculous.
Yep.
That is, our justice system. I don't even call it, I call it the injustice system, Canada is the Disneyland for pedophiles. And you know what? I'll stand and debate you till, the cows come home as to why I believe that is the case. And we've received thousands of emails where people have gone through the court system, and like we said earlier in the program, they get re-victimized. Nobody believes us, you know what I mean? So the Victor Walk, May 14th to May 23rd, is going to shine a very bright light on this issue. And I know that we're going to get the support because we've already seen it. My Twitter account last week had 5 million hits to it. And people are starting to use the hashtag Victor Walk. People are starting to get organized in their town or city to do their own Victor Walk. So, we're really excited about next year and really, like I said, shining a huge light on this.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to walking with you and, sort of. But no, I'm serious. I'm looking forward to walking with you and walking beside you, buddy. I'm going to talk to you after the show, so I'm just going to put you on hold right now, okay?
Okay.
All right, and we're going to wrap up the show. We're completely out of time. Arthur, thank you so much for taking time out. The gatehouse.org is that for ArthurVictorWalk.com. And nextsportstar.com for us. Completely out of time. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.